EQ, compression, sidechain, automation, comping, saturation, levels, slicing. I know nothing.
That might have been a tad dramatic, but I will say music production can get very overwhelming because there are a lot of techniques and principles that claim to help us improve our music and make it sound better. And one of the ways that we can at least try to delve through some of this is to get advice from experts in the field. One of those experts is Louis Bell, who is a famous producer who has worked with Post Malone on numerous tracks and has been nominated for many Grammy Awards in the past. And he has a music production course on this platform called Monthly, now called Studio. And I've taken that class and I'm going to share with you some of the best tips that I've learned from taking that class. What? That wasn't even a scary statement. Whatever. Let's head to the DAW. So the first thing Louis emphasizes is having a solid template that we can open every time we start a new song. And the importance of this is so that we don't have to interrupt our creative workflow to open up a VST, apply effects. They're already there when we start a track. So I have my template here, and these are just common things that I've used. So I've separated all of them into folders of groups for the different types of instruments that I use. And then within each of those tracks, like you can see here in my guitar, I have the different effects that I would use. And then same thing for my vocals. I have my whole vocal chain that I would use here already loaded so that if I have a vocal melody idea in my head, I can just go and start recording it without having to load up all those VSTs. And you'll also notice that I've turned down all the gain knobs to negative 12.5 dB, and that's so that I have more headroom when I'm mixing and things don't start clipping too soon. And then the last thing that I have is, or one of the other things is I have bus channels for all of the different groupings of instruments. So if I want to turn down all of the basses or all of the drums, I can do so with the bus channels here. And then I also have some effects channels for sending effects to, and then finally on the master bus, I have the mastering chain that I use. So the second thing I learned from Louis Bell is all about arrangement. So when he starts a song, he usually starts with a chord progression, and then he builds the minimum number of instruments required to create an arrangement from that. So he doesn't spend a lot of time with sound design. He doesn't try to build up massive amounts of layers. He just has the minimum amount to build an arrangement. And the thing that surprised me a lot is that he said that in his first initial draft of an arrangement, he usually never adds drums. And he mentions that the reason for this is that if he starts off the song with drums, it may force the song to have them where it may not actually complement the song. So the whole first draft doesn't have drums, and then from then he can sort of pick exactly where in the song it needs to have drums, or maybe the song just doesn't need to have drums at all, and that's his thought process there. So in the song that I did in the class called Double Down, I tried to take a very similar approach, and all I started off was this main idea here. I literally just created a chord progression that had the vibe that I wanted, and then I built it out from there. So I did the minimum amount of layers needed to make some sort of a verse, chorus vibe. And so in the chorus, I just layered a few other instruments and then created this. So I just added some bass, a little bit of guitar, nothing crazy, nothing outlandish. I just tried to follow sort of his steps in that process. Now, while Louis doesn't add a bunch of tracks initially, the one thing that he does harp on is he wants to make sure that every part that he puts into the DAW is recorded perfectly. And what I mean by that, the pitch is right and the timing is right. So when it comes to laying down chords, he usually ends up playing the chords because he wants that difference in velocity and the difference of the playing style, but then he'll actually go in and edit it to make sure that it fits well and he didn't hit any wrong notes. So for example, I have this chord progression here, and this is something that I played and then I somewhat quantized it. Now Lewis is very much against quantizing things, and if you can see here, notice that only some of the notes are quantized and everything else is a little bit past the beat. And so the way to do this is, for example, this might have been actually here. So what I did is I just dragged this, and then the note that is the earliest, I just drag it to the beat. So now nothing is coming before the beat, but now you only have one note that's hitting right on the beat, and then everything else is in that pocket and sitting right past the beat, which is giving it more of a groove. And that's something that he does with all his instruments, including the keyboards. The bass he kind of keeps more like right on the beat, but for things like snares and hats, he'll have those just sitting right behind the beat so that it sits more in the pocket and gives it more of a groove. And it's not just instruments that Lewis is meticulous about. Oh no. Vocals, he's even more meticulous in a much grander way. And he actually sings in the chorus because for him it's the best way to actually come up with a vocal melody, to actually sing out some gibberish and figure out a vocal melody. So once he lays out a vocal melody and has sort of a verse, well, he actually starts with a chorus melody first, and then the pre-chorus, and then the verse. So he kind of works from a backwards approach. Once he has all of that, he makes sure that it is first sung properly, so at least relatively in key, and then also timed very properly. And so the way he does this, if we look at a vocal recording that I have here, so I'll just play a snippet here. Dreams of lies, trapped deep inside. So the first thing that he does is make sure that the transients of the vocals sit where they should be on the beat. So here, I think before I tend to sing my stuff a little bit early, so this might have been here. So I would just, now on Studio One, you just Control plus Alt plus click and drag, which is the coolest feature. And then you just drag it to just behind the beat. Again, we're trying to like make vocals sit in the pocket. And so that's what he does. And he literally just scrolls through, and everything that he sings, he makes sure that it's sitting just behind the vocal. And he does that for everything. The other thing that he does, other than just letting the auto-tune take care of the tuning, of course he uses actual auto-tune, not Wave's real tune, is he'll go in and use Melodyne, and he's very meticulous about that as well. So he'll go on the Melodyne. Now this, for whatever reason, isn't analyzing it like it was before. It got turned flat. I don't know if it's because I rendered it weird or whatever, but he would sit here, and if he needs to adjust the lengths of the notes, he would do that. He would adjust all of the note positions as well, and he would literally even go in. And of course this isn't going to show, but a lot of times there'd be these little green lines showing the slope from one note to the next, and he would adjust the slope so that it wasn't going up too fast or going up too slow from one note to the next. And he doesn't just do that for the main vocal, he does that for all of the backing vocals, whether that's duplicates and harmonies. So he makes sure that the vocal is absolutely perfect, even if he's just pitching it to an artist, which he does all the time because he's not a singer. One last tip I learned from Lewis is that he low passes the vast majority of the instruments that he uses. And the reason for that is he wants the vocal to shine as much as possible. So he wants the vocal occupying a lot of those high-end sparkly frequency ranges. And so he low passes a lot of the instruments so that the vocals have their room to shine. And so I have an example of that here. So in that verse, this is what the keys sound like. And you can see that I have a a low pass filter here, so that's cutting out a lot of the highs. This is what it sounds like without it. And you can hear that it has a lot of crispiness when you take that low pass off. And so Lewis argues that if that crispiness is going to contend with the vocals, so he just go ahead and low passes it. And a lot of times he'll filter it in the verse, and that's what I did here. So I filter it up. But notice I don't filter it all the way to the top end of the frequency spectrum. I filter it up just so that you can hear that there's a little bit more of that mid to upper range starting to come in, and that adds some movement to the track as well. So yeah, there's a lot to learn from Lewis Bell, and I feel like I've gained a lot from taking his course. And if you want a more in-depth look at his course, I did a whole video series about it on my channel, so you can check out that video right here if you are interested. And until next time, I will see you in the next video.